When it comes to thoughts and deeds, we would assume that our thoughts are private and our deeds are public. What we do, everybody can see. What we think is something that is in our own minds, and people don't know what's in our minds. And we'll learn today that counterintuitively, that's not really so. That thoughts are visible and actions should be invisible. Lאות לאחרים לאות in Menachot Daf Yomi Menachot. And we'll understand the Gemara. This is a great example of something that we've done a lot during Kodshim, but not only during Kodshim, is to infuse our traditional analytic approach to the Gemara, a good Lithuanian analytic approach to understanding with accuracy what the Gemara is saying and what the Rishonim and the later Achronim are saying, but also at the same time to infuse a visual, almost artistic understanding of the Gemara. That one has to understand the Gemara on more dimensions than just the analytical. Without the analytical, we don't know what's going on. We have got to use the analytical understanding of the Gemara to understand, as we call it, pshat. Just to know what is the Gemara saying. What exactly is the Gemara saying? What does it mean? And so with the other texts that we're learning. We're learning Gemara Rashi, we're learning Tosfos. To understand what they mean, we need an analytical methodology. But one has to go beyond that as well. As we know, there are the different levels of understanding. There's drush, and there's remez, and there's sod. Those get into you need a much more right brain approach to be able to see those dimensions in addition to analytical dimensions. The psukim that we're learning, the three psukim that we're learning here. The first we had a few daf ago. V'ra'u kol amei haaretz ki shem Hashem nikra alecha v'yaru mimecha. And all the people of the world will see that Hashem's name is upon you, and they will fear you. The nations of the world will have an awe for you, because they will see that the name of Hashem is upon you. And Chazal say that's the Tefillin sheberosh, that's your Tefillin that they will see. And then the psukim in Parashas Bo, v'haya lecha lאות al yadcha u'zikaron beineinecha. The tefillin should be for a sign on your arm, and a zikaron, something to remember and to remind you between your eyes, on your head. L'man tiyeh torat Hashem beficha ki v'yad chazaka hotzeacha Hashem miMitzrayim. The difficulty with v'haya lecha lאות al yadcha, in Hebrew the yad can be hand or arm. It's the same word. In English, we have a different word for the hand and for the arm. In Lashon HaKodesh, yad means hand and yad means arm. So the question is, where exactly do we have to put the tefillin shebiyad? And then in Parashas Eikev, v'samtem et dvarei ele al levavchem v'al nafshechem, k'shatem otam lאות al yadchem v'hayu l'totafot beineinechem. The tefillin should be for a sign on your hands or arms, and as a sign between your eyes. So now we come to our Gemara. Omar ma yadcha zu kiboret. Where on the arm do you put your tefillin on? Of course, we just take it for granted, because as children we were taught how to put on tefillin, and we know where it is. But the beauty of Gemara is we go back to first principles. How do we know anything? Gemara explores the world of Torah and of halacha like a child. Where does it come from? How do you know it? Where does it say so? Just understanding the basics. Kiboret is the bicep. So the Brisa tells us the place to put the tefillin is on the bicep. But how do we know that? Where does it say that? Says the Gemara, the Tanu Rabbanu, we learned in the Brisa, Al yadcha zu gova shebiyad, atome zu gova shebiyad o enu elo al yadcho mamish. What is when it tells you that the tefillin should be on the highest part of your arm, is that really so? Or when it says biyadcha, maybe it means on your hand. Amra Torah haner tefillin biyad v'haner tefillin berosh. You can see from the context, the Torah tells us in the same pasuk, put tefillin on your hand and put tefillin on your head. Ma lahalan begova sheberosh, afkan begova shebiyad. A little further in the Gemara, we'll learn that where does the tefillin have to go on the head? It has to go on the top of the head. You don't wear your tefillin on your forehead. You wear your tefillin on the top of your head, pointing upwards. So the same as the tefillin is on the top of your head, the tefillin should be at the highest place of your arm, also pointing upwards. And that's how we know that it must be the kiboret, it must be the bicep. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Rabbi Eliezer says we can learn it from another place. We've got three sources for this din, for this law that the tefillin is on the biceps. We have three sources for it. The one is the context and comparison of tefillin shebiyad to tefillin sheberosh, the hand tefillin with the rosh tefillin. Rabbi Eliezer says, I don't need that. You don't need to work it out that way. The Torah says, and this should be a sign for you. Lאות v'lo לאחרים לאות. It's a sign for you and not for others. That's what we learn from Lecha. This should be, in other words, don't put your tefillin on a place where it's visible to others. The tefillin shebiyad is private. And therefore it can't be on the hand because the hand is visible. And some of the Achronim talk about, and what about the forearm? And some learn from here that you see that it's right to have your forearms covered as well, or certainly at that time, or their arm was fully covered. So if it says, could it be on the forearm, they go into that question. Some say the forearm is sometimes not covered, so clearly it's not there. But one thing is for sure, that above the elbow, not just for women, for men as well, above the elbow is covered. That's not a place, that's part of the body that we cover. I know there are people who walk around in, maybe their shirts, I don't know what they are, but they look like undershirts, with their whole arm sticking out, but that's not the Torah way to dress. The Torah way to dress, at least the upper arm is covered. And so when it says this should be a sign for you and not for others. It should be worn in a place where others don't see it. Rabbi Yitzchak has a third view. He says you don't need that. It says you should put these words on your heart and tie them. So your tefillin shebiyad, your arm tefillin, should be next to your heart. And as the Rambam says, and as my father taught me when he taught me how to put on tefillin, if you hold your left arm extended out with your palm upwards, and you put your tefillin shebiyad vertically on your bicep, then when you put your arm down, your tefillin automatically comes very close to your heart. Then the kesher tefillin is next to your heart, as the Rambam explains. So clearly it has to be on the arm, otherwise how do you get them next to your heart? Because the tefillin is a connecting of, as we discussed a day or two ago, the tefillin is a connecting of the thinking process with the emotional, intuitive process of the heart and the physical action process of the arm, and they're all aligned. Tefillin is a few moments a day that we have to check the alignment between what we think, what we feel, and what we do. And that's the fundamental principle of Jewish integrity, is that what we think, what we feel, and what we do are all aligned, and Tefillin helps us in that alignment process. Rabbi Chia v'Rav Acha breder Rav Avia machvin u'manach le'lahadad dilibe. Rabbi Chia and Rav Acha were very careful to put it next to their hearts. Rav Ashi haviyativ kamed amemer. Rav Ashi was sitting in front of Amemer, havatzeri biyadeh, and he had a wound on his arm, and so he tore open his sleeve so that his sleeve wouldn't hurt where his arm was. So he walked with a gap in his sleeve that exposed his upper arm. And when he was wearing tefillin, they were visible. The tefillin could be seen. So Amemer said to Rav Ashi, do you not agree with the principle, no matter where you learn it from, that it's got to be on the bicep? We also learned a principle which is not rejected. The principle being that the tefillin sheyad should be covered, they shouldn't be visible. Do you not hold of that? No, I believe that when it says lecha la'ot, it doesn't mean they mustn't be visible, that if they're visible, it's a big problem. It's not about how you wear tefillin, says Rav Ashi. It's about where you wear tefillin. All the Torah is telling you, you should wear it in that place which is normally covered on your arm, b'yadcha, that part of your arm which is lecha la'ot, that part of your arm which is not normally visible. In my case, it happens to be visible because I've got a wound on my arm. It's unusual, but for everybody, the place on the arm that you wear it is the place which is normally covered. So Rav Ashi believes that the lecha la'ot is not coming to tell you how to put on tefillin, but where to put on tefillin. Whereas in the case of the earlier days, where Rabbi Eliezer says, לאחרים לאות, Rabbi Eliezer is holding that it's telling you how to wear tefillin. Your shelyad should be worn in such a way that it's not visible to other people. That's how he learns it. The big issue in our piece of Gemara, if we learn it analytically to start with, is Rav Ashi, who we paskin like, he's the last authority and a major halakhic authority in the Talmud, in the Gemara. And if we decide like Rav Ashi, what does Rav Ashi mean when he says, I believe that lאות v'lo לאחרים לאות is telling you where to put it on? Does he mean, and therefore it can be visible? There's nothing wrong with it being visible. Or is he saying what it's telling you is to put it in the place that is normally covered because it should be covered? But if it's not covered, that doesn't make it not tefillin. That doesn't take away from the mitzvah. Yes, you've got to put it in the place that it's covered. So does Rav Ashi agree that ideally the tefillin shel yad should be covered? Or does Rav Ashi believe the covering of the tefillin shel yad is unimportant? What's important, the Torah is just telling you where to put it. You put it on there. But if you're wearing one of those funny shirts that don't have sleeves and you've got your tefillin on your arm and everybody can see it, that's also good. What does Rav Ashi hold lahalacha? And trying to reflect on the Gemara, understand the Gemara, why doesn't the Torah just tell us, put it on your bicep? Why doesn't the Gemara just say, it says hakiboret, but why is there all this visual element of it? Can it be seen? Can it not be seen? L'cha lאות v'lo לאחרים לאות. Al levavcha should be next to your heart. There's so much art going on in the Gemara in a sense. There's a visual piece, there's an emotional piece, an intuitive piece. It's not just the analytics. And it would seem that these ideas, both that it has to be on your heart and that it should be in a private place that the public doesn't see, are principles that apply no matter what we say technically, where exactly you put the tefillin. There is also an underlay or an overlay of an artistic image of privacy of the shel yad and publicity of the shel rosh. It's so interesting that they're distinguished, that with the shel rosh it specifically says v'ra'u kol ha'me'atz. People need to see it. And the shel yad, it says l'cha lאות. There seems to be something in that, and surely Rav Ashi doesn't discard that. But then I came across the Rambam, and the Rambam seems to hold that Rav Ashi does discard that. The Rambam says, "V'shel yad kosherot al smolo ala kiboret." You put the shel yad on your bicep. It defines exactly what the bicep is. And we will find if you put your tefillin there, when you put your arm down and you stand up with your arm down, your tefillin will be positioned next to your heart, and that's al levavcha and you mekayim that. He says nothing at all about it having to be invisible, having to be covered from others. He seems to paskin that what's important is that it's against your heart. So what do we say? L'cha lאות v'lo לאחרים לאות. What does the Rambam do with that? He holds like Rav Ashi, and he holds that Rav Ashi believes that this is about where you put on tefillin, it's not about how you put on tefillin. That's simply teaching us that the place is the bicep. It doesn't matter whether it can be seen or not. The Mordechai says quite clearly, he brings the Ratz, I think the Ratz is the Shibboleh HaLeket, De lahachi shel rosh kari le v'ra'u lefi she'en b'makom gilui berosh. The tefillin are meant to be in the exposed place of the head. Aval shel yad hem bizroa tachat levusho. That the shel yad should be under your jacket, under your clothing, or under your shirt. K'derashinan l'cha lאות v'lo לאחרים לאות. So even though we paskin like Rav Ashi, you see from the Mordechai that Rav Ashi does not discard the requirement that tefillin shebiyad is in a private place. The Shulchan Aruch, how do we paskin in the Shulchan Aruch? Tefillin sherosh tov liyotam gluyim v'nirin. In Hilchis Tefillin Siman Kav Zayin, the Shulchan Aruch says sherosh, the head tefillin, should be exposed. Says the Ramor, v'shel yad ein lakpidim em gluyim or mechusim. Says the Ramor, like the Rambam, but the shel yad, it doesn't matter. You can have it exposed, not exposed. We're not worried about this l'cha lאות, because l'cha lאות only teaches you that it must be on your bicep. It doesn't tell you that it must be hidden from the public eye. So it seems to me that my understanding of Rav Ashi was not right, although the Mordechai seems to take Rav Ashi as including the private element of it, but in the Rambam, the Shulchan Aruch, the Ramor, it doesn't seem to be so. But then I found the Vilna Gaon. Says the Vilna Gaon, this psak of the Ramor, Uv'shel yad ein lakpid im em gluyim or mechusim. When the shel yad, it doesn't matter whether they're covered or they're not. Says the Vilna Gaon, that's Rav Ashi. Yes, thank you, we know that. But then the Vilna Gaon adds one word, Va'ayin Morgan Avrom. And to understand the Ramor, have a look at the Morgan Avrom. What does the Magen Avraham said? When the Ramah says it doesn't matter if they're visible or not, we're talking a Perush Nikru'u Begadav Letlan Ba. Only if your sleeve happens to be torn like Rav Ashi's was. Then you don't have to worry about it, your tefillin is still good. But says the Magen Avraham and the Vilna Gaon, but there's no question that the Ramah and the Shulchan Aruch all agree that the right place for the tefillin shel yad is that they're covered, not that they're exposed. And that brings us to the magnificent Sefer HaTruma. The Sefer HaTruma is the Rabbeinu Baruch, who was the author of the Tosfos we had in Zvachim. Zvachim, I mentioned, the Tosfos had a different kind of a style to them. They're Rabbeinu Baruch. Rabbeinu Baruch was the main Talmud of the Ri, an important Baal Tosfos, and in his time he wrote a halacha sefer called the Sefer HaTruma. This was before the Rambam was known in Europe. Even the Sefer HaTruma himself, it seems, never saw the Rambam's psakim. So the Sefer HaTruma was one of the halachas for him during the time of the Tosfos. And he brings this piece of Gemara, and he says, Mashma lichora ki tov lechasot atfilin shel yad. It seems that the right thing is to cover the tefillin sheyad, kshem bizra. Kivan she'akatuv ikpid la'anichan b'makom lecha la'ot. Yes, it's telling you the place. We paskin like Rav Ashi, it's telling you the place. But it uses the way the Torah tells us the place is put it on your bicep because lecha la'ot v'lo la'acherim la'ot. So in telling us where to put it, the Torah is also telling us how to put it. Rav Ashi is not rejecting that. והתפילין שורש טובו להיות גלויים ונראים, דכתיב וראו כל עמי הארץ, כשם השם נקרא עליך ויראו ממך. משמע שצריכים ראיית העולם. But your head tefillin should be visible that the whole world can see them. So it's really interesting. If the head tefillin represent thought, and the arm tefillin represent action, I would have thought actions are revealed and thought is private. What do we see? No, thoughts are revealed and actions are private. And that's the essence of so much in the Torah. Thoughts are not private. We think thoughts are private. Thoughts are not private. And it's not just that that we know that Hashem is royal levov, that the Ribbono Shel Olam sees our thoughts. It's not just the Ribbono Shel Olam. We need to understand that what you think creates an energy. Energy is detectable. You can detect brain waves with instruments, with scientific instruments. There are ways even scientifically to know what's going on in your mind, what you're thinking in your mind. Your brains are oscillating, they're creating energy. The people around you pick that energy up. They can't always articulate it, but they pick it up. What you're thinking, people are feeling. You can't hide it. You can't fake it. You can fake the action, but you can't fake the thought. A thought is galui, mashmed shetzuchim re'iyat ha'olam. The world sees your thoughts and knows your thoughts. And that's the right way to be. They sense your thoughts. If you approach a person and you feel that person's out to get you and you get all defensive, that person feels it. If you approach a person and you're full of love and you want to embrace the person and you don't feel threatened by the person feels it. The energy, the inner place from which you come at something or someone is completely detectable by the other person. We are so exposed. We think we're private, but we're not. Our thoughts are revealed. People get what's going on in our mind. They see it in our eyes. They feel it in our energy. They see it in our body language. They get what's going on in our mind. That's part of the problem with the misunderstandings that take place in phone calls and even on Zoom calls is because people can't pick up the energy. So all they've got are the words. And the words you can manipulate. You can't manipulate what's going on in your head. And as you become sophisticated as a listener, you learn to listen to energy, not to words. The words are things that people have put together in order to create a particular outcome. But the energy, they're not controlling. The energy is what's really going on in their minds. And we have to know that and understand that we have to intervene in our thoughts. That when we approach something or someone, check our thoughts. What am I thinking about this person? What am I feeling about this person? What am I thinking while I'm davening? What am I thinking while I'm learning, while I'm doing a mitzvah? What's in my head? Because that's what is determined. The hands, the actions, that should be covered. No reason to expose all your mitzvahs and your actions and all the things that you do. That's private. And that's v'ra'u kol amei ha'aretz kishem Hashem nikra alecha vayaru mimcha. A few daf ago we learned the chizkuni lashon havana. When it says they will see, it's not that they will see your tefillin. It's lashon havana. They will understand what's in your head. They will understand your godliness. They will feel it. They will feel the kedushas hamachshove. They'll feel the sanctity of your thoughts. That's what tefillin are. And as a result of that, they'll fear you. And the Sforno says an amazing thing. He says it's like the story of Alexander the Great, who when he came and he wanted to destroy Yerushalayim, Shimon HaTzadik came out and met him down the road here. Tel Afek, just down the road here. The park is still there. You can still go and see the place where they met. And Alexander the Great, sees Shimon HaTzadik dressed in his big day kahuna, and he bows down in front of him. Says the Sforno, that ability, he didn't say a word to Shimon HaTzadik. He didn't say, come in and let's talk. The moment he saw him, he bowed down, and his servant said to him, Alexander, since when do you bow down to a human being? Who are you bowing down to? Shimon HaTzadik. He could see, he could feel, because he could feel the energy that was coming from Shimon HaTzadik. And that's what's so important to understand, that what's in our heads, the Tefillin Shorosh, that's for the whole world to see. Shetzrichim ru'iyat ha'olam. But what we do is, as Michal says, v'hatznei lechet im Hashem Elokecha. The way you walk, the way you act, hatznei, hide that. Nobody has to see what you do. What you do should be private and personal. What you think is public. Others can feel and sense exactly what's in your mind.